Good morning. Detoy,
Morning, Jan.
welcome. Brilliant meeting you over Zoom like this. I truly appreciate it. In light of the lockdown, obviously, we will have to embrace this type of technology more and more. And I think it's also a very poignant introduction to the type of revolution that society is going to go through, or busy going through, our fourth industrial revolution, and also pointing towards how it's going to affect the world of work, change careers fundamentally. So it's actually the most brilliant time for us to go through your career report and get an idea of where you are headed in terms of your habits, but also in terms of where society is going with all these changes going along. So welcome yet again, and
Thank you.
I truly appreciate that you took the time so that we could give you some feedback on this. My name is Jan Niemand. I'm from Rescript Coaching, and this is Detoy Genis and his career report. And so Detoy, give us a little bit of feedback before we start sharing our screen and delving into the report there. What was your experience of the shadow match system and seeing your behavioral patterns on the system and the report, and now how it's applied to generating your perfect or ideal career report, and how that gives you some insight?
Thanks, Jan. So for me, doing the shadow match was an interesting experience. I think it was a test that it's kind of one of its sorts in a way, and I really enjoyed that part of it. I enjoyed the interactive element of the test, and also the different type of questions it asked, especially your conceptual fitness tests and the efficiency you have during the test, etc. That's measured. So it's a good feedback. I love the feedback. It's very thorough. There's quite a few stations that I should work through and can work through, and that helped me quite a bit. And then when it comes to the career report, I think what I absolutely loved about that, it is absolutely built on my habits that has already been tested in the shadow match test. So it's a click of a button and you immediately have results. And then within 2 days, you have the option to go test your personality and your experiences towards how the career report is guiding you. And also, I think what I really appreciate is the fact that I'm not being told this is what I have to do, but actually that the career report allows me to have information and a better insight into what types of directions in a career I may enjoy or may function in easy, or where it's second nature to me to function in those areas. But also, after having that frame of reference and that perspective, I have the ability to go do some, not research, but just ask a few questions and determine in which direction I want to focus, especially because I'm a bit older. I have a bit more experience. I think a younger person, maybe who doesn't have as many years behind them after school, or still in school, they would not necessarily have this experience, but that's why we bring in parents. And I just appreciate that it's compatible for me as an older student, and someone who's a younger student or still at school would also be able to use it.
So on that, some fantastic insight. The system actually takes into account your age, and it generates different types of reports based on how much experience you would have had in the workplace or not. So for someone under the age of, say, 21, it will generate a slightly different report with the assumption that this person doesn't necessarily have any long-lasting work experience. And for you, that who has had some experience now as well, it can give you a good idea of what this will entail, but it also assumes that you still need to go quite a way before you reach someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s. yet again, if you've moved on in years and become a bit more mature in your workplace experience, it will definitely generate a slightly different angle as well. So that's what I absolutely love. It's completely individualized, and it also takes into account where you are in your life's journey. So fantastic for highlighting that. Thank you. So Detoy, are you ready to start delving into the juicy stuff?
I read through my report yesterday. There's a few interesting things that I saw. Definitely stuff I've considered in the past, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's get into it.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to share your report on the screen here. Are you able to see that?
I can.
Brilliant. So here's our career report. The report is confidential, obviously. So you have given your permission that we can use it in this video. But generally, the report is only available to the persons who have the correct authority to access it. So one does not necessarily have to worry about confidentiality or the break of that. So the introduction is just there to orient yourself. Absolutely brilliant to just get an idea of where this report is headed. And we also have a reading your report. So it warns us from the very beginning, this report is very detailed. So I would really suggest that exactly as you are doing now, is not just to do the shadow match test, do the report, and then go through it on your own. You could do that. It's good. We're not going to stop you. But what I would suggest is to actually sit down with a career coach and to take you through the report, and also to help you build goals and milestones after that. Because obviously we don't just want to receive this information, we want to act on it. We want to actually do goal setting. We want to go and do stuff to better our understanding in using this information to actually start exploring and building our careers. And the first point of departure that we need to talk about is the fact that the future of work is dramatically changing, and it's changing extremely fast. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0. I included some links in the booking email that you went through. I don't know whether you were able to watch them, but it gives us an idea of the world is busy changing. We're talking robotics, we're talking smart automation, we're talking artificial intelligence, we're talking globalization, interconnected economies, that type of stuff. And the socioeconomic impact of what's busy happening in the world is definitely going to affect how jobs and careers will look like in the future. So here's the big thing. We actually are not sure where this revolution is going to end up. And the world has gone through 3 revolutions since. And this would have been highlighted in the videos as well. But it boils down to a social revolution which fundamentally changes how we work. Is not a new thing, but it is always accompanied by uncertainty, and it's always accompanied by people having to reinvent themselves and how they work. To give you an idea, this doesn't necessarily even have to do with a revolution, but 10 years ago, the job as social media manager was a job that didn't exist. 5 years ago, people started realizing if they want to have a meaningful, sensible online social media presence, they need to appoint someone to handle all the traffic. And now, 10 years later, it's turned into a bona fide professional career with people earning big bucks if they hit it successfully. So that's just one of the careers that didn't exist 10 years ago. And once we've gone through this revolution properly, who knows what types of jobs are going to pop up, and quite frankly, which jobs are going to become redundant. It can be a little bit scary to chat about the fourth industrial revolution, but I don't want to spend too much time there and get hung up on all the different changes. It can turn into a very huge debate and can actually unsettle people quite a bit. But it is very important to take note that this is definitely busy happening. We are experiencing it as we speak. And the report and the shadow match system takes into account that we have to generate career reports that are able to deal with the realities of Industry 4.0. So the type of advice and the type of suggestions you're going to receive will be with the fourth industrial revolution at the back end and with a lens that we view the world going forward. Does that make sense? Is that enough for you to work with for now?
Definitely, Jan. I've touched on this. I've read on some of it. So, like you said, it can be intimidating. But I think the value in this element is understanding it's a reality, understanding it's there, and accepting that things will change in the future. I mean, the fact that we can have a coaching session via Zoom while we're in two different provinces is just an example of how this will work. But I also think it's exciting. I think there's a bunch of stuff that's going to change, that's going to open up a new world for us to discover, and I'm looking forward to that. So it's good that it's part of it, but I also like what you said, that we're not just going to focus on this, but also how the advice forward can work into adapting to a new society that is developing.
Brilliant. So Dutoy, from the fourth industrial revolution, we basically have 4 career types that will surface. We have our system designers, the guys that design the systems and processes that shape business, society, that shape cities. So we're talking about coders, programmers, engineering in that sense. We're going to have specialist practitioners or technicians. So these are people that work with robots and the systems to implement it, to get things going. We're talking about robots that will probably be able to replace your run-of-the-mill barista and make better coffee than a human barista, because it can be programmed finely and minutely, and it can just produce at exactly the same level, doesn't get tired. So your technical enabler will be the one that sets up the machine, that sets up the robot, that services it, that maintains it, that specs it so that it has a certain deliverable. Then we've got our human behavioral specialists, or our human enablers. These are the people that facilitate the interaction between technology and people. Or they will be the people that fill the roles which robots and machines cannot do. We're talking about here stuff like caregivers, especially primary school teaching, care of the frail, of the old, possibly psychology, counseling, coaching, that type of stuff, working with people. And the big stuff is designers and artists. Art, designing, and making things beautiful, accessible, and making it aesthetically pleasing is going to be big. It's going to be huge, because it's a a very human aspect, and creativity in that sense is no longer just we're not going to have the suffering poor artist. They will probably be there, but designing, artwork, graphics, that type of stuff, it's going to be huge. So our 4 main career formers: designing specialists, artists, human enablers, technical enablers, and your system designers and engineers. Makes sense?
Does definitely.
It sounds very narrow. It sounds very, very restrictive. But in the end, if we work with those categories, we can get a very good idea of how the report is also set up. So Dutoy, the first aspect that we need to take into account is the broad focus of your career based on your behavioral patterns. So what should you be aware of when first trying to understand which career would work for me? So in every section, you'll see this little link, a video there. You can click on it and it'll take you directly to a YouTube link where they explain the concepts for you in depth. So what we're seeing now is the broad focus of your career. Every single career engages 3 things: people, objects and tasks, and ideas. So those 3 simplified categories can help us get a grasp of with what type of broad focus career you need to work with. What we can see here is it gives us an interesting measurement. You are moderately high on tasks. So you want to do stuff and execute stuff. But if this becomes the dominating factor in your career, for instance, if the tasks of your career would be more towards the radical, I need to constantly do and execute stuff, that might end up frustrating you. You've got habits that are moderately geared towards executing. Then you've got a slightly higher inclination towards people. And so in other words, enjoy working with people, like working with people, but careers that are dominated with caring for people, constantly working with people, people focused, might end up becoming a little bit draining for you. And what we can clearly see is a stronger preference towards working with ideas and concepts. Anything that stands out for you there?
It's interesting because I actually used to think I'm more people focused than necessarily ideas focused. But on the other hand, the way I saw working with people, I always assumed ideas are part of it. So I didn't make ideas an extra defining factor. It was something that was assumed for me. So in that sense, it is very interesting. Yeah.
When you work with people, do you like learning new things about people?
Yes, for instance, or in working with people, when I have to use my thinking capacity to creatively assess a situation or become creative with certain concepts, especially those that are a bit abstract, that if people and those ideas are combined, I find that I'm functioning in my sweet spot. So that is interesting for me. So like I said, it's something I didn't consider as a defining factor beforehand.
Fantastic. The second part of a career is the stability or the dynamic content of a career. So here's the interesting part. You get very stable careers where the content and the flow of the day is extremely stable. It never changes. Everything is predictable. You can actually take this day and project it into the future 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, and you will probably get the same type of content, or at least workday flow. So highly routinized, highly structured. That's the one end of the spectrum. On the other end is very dynamic. Nothing can be predicted. Everything is new. Every day is different. The content is different. So to give you an idea, what would be an example of an extremely stable, extremely repetitive type of work that you could or job or career that you can maybe think of?
I think someone working in telecommunication, maybe, because
Exactly.
type in a number, phone someone, get feedback, put the phone down, repeat.
Rinse and repeat, eh?
Yeah.
And it's scripted. It's scripted most of the time, that type of stuff. And another idea would be a librarian. A librarian that does a community library, or a person that does archiving. So the moment there's that sense of repetition and constant stability, that is a stable work. On the other on the other end of the spectrum are your dynamic careers. Here we're thinking about a sea rescue pilot who does sea rescue missions. An emergency can arise at any point in time. Every single emergency is different. So that's extremely dynamic. We're also thinking about anti-poaching units working in the Kruger. That's extremely dynamic. It can happen at any time of the day or night, and you need to be geared and go for it. Ambulance drivers and trauma paramedics. Fascinatingly, many people would then say, okay, so my child wants to become a doctor. Is a doctor stable or dynamic? It depends on the type of medical field. A general practitioner would probably work more towards the stable side, a GP, whereas a trauma surgeon would probably lean more towards the dynamic side of the spectrum. A researcher, for instance, let's take a researcher in virology, in researching the COVID-19 pandemic, might actually now experience quite a dynamic field, but there are still some stability factors to it. So all of us, based on our habits, can fall on any place in this spectrum, and we need to understand that it's not just about choosing a career which is stable or dynamic. It is also choosing the career type and the application within that career, and even where that career is occurring. Is it within a military setup that's highly structured, rigid, stable, or is it within, for instance, an anti-poaching unit where I have to rescue animals and constantly react to problems? So we need to take into account the stable and dynamic aspects of your career. So, Detoy, what we can see here is middle of the way. You appreciate structure and order, but you want that slight bit of a challenge to get an idea of, I don't want it to be repetitive every single day, but I also don't want to field constant surprises and challenges all the time. What is your feedback on that?
Yeah, no, actually, before taking the test, felt that I'm a bit more dynamic, to be honest. So when I saw this, I felt, yes, I don't know how I feel about this feedback. But then I think when I read the description above, when I watched the video, the way it was defined, I actually could start looking back in my life and saw a few situations where I could appreciate this feedback. So I like a dynamic situation, absolutely. but I think the idea of a safety net of structure, if I can put it that way, puts me at ease. So it's almost like a base of operations, and from there I can go out and explore new ideas or explore new realities, which I love. So I have the freedom to be dynamic, but I know that there's a like I mentioned a base of operations that I can come back to, and I actually really agree with this. And I enjoyed the fact that this report caused me to go do some self-reflection, and to really ask a few tough questions.
Fantastic.
And yeah, what I also like is that some days I would feel more dynamic, and some days I would feel more stable. And I think that's why I'm smack bang in the middle here. My behavior does indicate that.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for that. And as with all technology and the wonderful realities, we are having some interesting internet connection difficulties on my side. So I think this calls for a quick pause and a quick break, just to process what was said. But Detoy, to give you some food for thought before we engage in our next session, the following current careers, and this is very important, they are currently active. The fourth industrial revolution might radically alter the content of the work. It might make the career completely redundant, or it might catapult the career into completely different spheres. And we can explore that as your coaching goes along. But some of the suggestions, these are not go and study advisory legal work. We're not saying that. What we are saying is go and explore the possibilities, because these jobs or current careers fit your dynamic, stable combination. These are advisory legal work, finance management, software development, teaching and lecturing, that probably strikes a chord with you, and fascinatingly, farming. So yet again, these are not go and do these things now. They are go and explore them, and it helps you think about the types of careers that fit the general stable versus dynamic preference of your habits. Toy, thank you for joining me for your first session. We will be back within a few short minutes and continue with the rest of your report. Thank you.